Hi, this is Bravo21. I'm a glider pilot and a sim developer. This is an overview of what's in the Schleicher AS33, this glider here, update 1.51, which is going to be uploaded to flightsim.to. Today it's the 4th of June 2022. I'll give you an overview of what those updates are. Okay, so I'll just run through the changes, taking them one at a time. First of all, strobes. The strobes in this glider broke during some update or other, which is the effects changes in Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's now fixed in 1.51. If I put the strobes on, I've set the time at the moment to 6:30 in the morning, so that it's dark enough that you can see the strobes. You can actually see them flashing. I don't know if it's coming across in the video. You can see it flashing on the panel there. Okay, that is what the strobes are supposed to look like. If it was near a dusk or something like that, it'd be kind of more visible. You can see them on the fin here. Okay, that is broken in the previous version. This multi-gauge, the gustiness of the winds, particularly when you're aloft, because there's now thermals, the air is moving around more. There's now much more increased smoothing of the information that's shown on this multi-gauge. Look, engine management, there have been changes due to the propeller support in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but otherwise to you this isn't really changed, but there's a fair amount of work to tidy that up. Coming across to the variometers, the compensation calculation. These are compensated so that they're not simple vertical speed indicators. I'm sure most of you watching this video already know that, but the way that the total energy is calculated has been redone from scratch. The underlying formula, which is a physical formula of how would you add or subtract kinetic energy, you know, the energy due to acceleration and deceleration, how would you factor that into the lift altitude changes so that the difference between those becomes neutral. That's a physical constant, right? That doesn't change, so that calculation is exactly the same. Okay, and that brings us on to the LX9050 display. In the middle, there are two particularly significant changes there. One is pretty much every button you can hit around here has been added to support a key event that you can set within Microsoft Flight Simulator control settings. You know, either keyboard or joystick buttons. And with a bit of luck, I'm going to be able to edit this video and include a picture which kind of shows which events have been connected to which button. So that's one major change. The other, and I'm going to take advantage of the top central button, the button that's right on the top of my joystick. I have configured it to operate the button that I'm highlighting, where it used to say attitude indicator. It's now both an attitude indicator. It toggles between nothing, a thermaling indicator, which I'm going to talk a fair bit more about, and one more click will toggle it to the attitude indicator, and then one more click will toggle it back to nothing. So it's now a three-way button: off, thermal indicator, attitude indicator. And I thought a little bit about overloading the button versus the other options we might have had, and it's not quite as daft as it sounds, in that if you're thermaling underneath a cloud, you've got the thermaling indicator up. You're going to see that operating in a minute. Then you're only one click away on the same button, because as you go into the cloud, you want to bring the artificial horizon up, and it is not sensible to be running the artificial horizon and the thermaling indicator. You can't really be in a cloud, you know, and concentrating on a thermaling indicator. You'd never do that, in real life. You know, cloud flying is a bit of a niche hobby anyway. You know, you can't see anything. But anyway, so those buttons are implemented. And then the last change I can remember on the panel, there's so many, you know, small changes that are just necessary, so I'm not talking about the majority of them, is winch launch has been added on the tow release.
Cable on, please.
So let's give that a go. I'm fully ballasted, which would be, and the wind is a crosswind from the right. It's a 5 knot wind or whatever it says. You don't normally raise the wheel. I know it's tempting to do it in a sim, but when you're taking off on the winch, you leave the wheel down, because even though you can see the gear warning is showing, because we're in the air, we're full of ballast, and we've got the wheel down, which is a set of conditions which is enough to trigger just a caution. But you normally keep the wheel down just in case the cable breaks. Cable breaks are really common. I don't know, it might be 1 in 10 launches. I don't know what it is. It depends on the type of cable. It feels like we're beginning to. I'll tell you what, I'll do a proper release this time. Oh, I didn't quite do it in time. So, okay, now I'll bring the gear up. Okay, and the idea here is, oh, hang on, it's still 6:30 in the morning. Give me a sec. There you go, 2 in the afternoon on July the 4th. It's not the correct date, but summertime. And okay, I don't know, because I've got a wind blowing, I can't be sure whether I'm getting ridge lift. I wouldn't really expect it. The wind is from the south. That would be the ridge over there that's working. But I'm going to mooch over to the most likely cloud, which is over here. Okay, and what we're going to be looking at is this thermaling display. And looking at that thermaling display, the idea is the plane is dropping coloured breadcrumbs behind it as it flies along. I'll make this easier to see, even though it's going to make it slightly harder to fly. I'm clearly in a thermal. Changing to thermaling flap and turning. I should have been looking around at this point, by the way. You always look before you turn. I'm flying slowly, which is risky in this terrain. But you get the idea. The plane is. This is in, I think, XE and it's in Condor Instruments. And whether the dot's green or red tells you whether it's climb or sink. The radius of the dot, how big the dot is. Oops, look at my low speed warning. Look, I'm just gently coming back down. See if I can improve this climb. You have to forgive me flying so slowly. I'm milking this thermal. Anyway, you get the idea of the blobs, and then the numbers on the screen. I'm going to have to speed up here. The top left-hand corner, the numbers down the left-hand side of this thermaling display. There's a wind display, the wind arrow telling me it's north up. All this stuff is north up. There's a wind arrow telling me where the wind is coming from. You'll see that more or less matches the multi-gauge that's to the left of the LX9050. It's currently saying 12 knots coming from roughly the south. There's a climb averaging where it says climb minus 1.3. My numbers are in knots. My climb or sink is in knots. That's configurable on the variometers. And it's saying, like, I'm currently sinking at half a knot, which is kind of fair enough. Below that, because I'm thermaling, there's something called true average. And that is, I'm going to just take some ridge lift, is actually what I'm doing. Okay, now I'm going to try thermaling in it. Might combine with a thermal maybe. Okay, so back to true average. That's the important one. which is, it's calculated when you start turning, you are deemed to be in a thermal as far as this gauge is concerned, and it makes a note of your height and speed at that point. So obviously it's possible you pull up into the thermal, you're flying really fast, okay, and then you zoom up, you level out, you started off at 100 knots, now you're only doing 55 knots. That isn't a true thermal. I mean, you've basically burned your kinetic energy. Yeah. Not the best thermaling ever. You've burned your kinetic energy to create some height. Don't worry, we're still alive. And that is actually subtracted from your average reading, because it's not really fair, because you're going to accelerate when you come back out of the thermal. You're going to throw that height away again. So that's not really telling you how fast you climbed. And also, it accumulates your climb rate from when the climb started. So because typically in a climb, you're climbing well for a bit, then not so well, then a bit better or whatever. And so your kind of moving average climb tends to be quite optimistic. And then the last thing to talk about on this thermaling display is the green bar at the bottom. The two parts to it, this green part at the bottom, is you've got a straightforward graph of height of lift with time, which is more useful when I'm doing decent thermaling. You're having a look at it, it definitely gives you an idea of what's your climb rate been like. But the left hand 2/3 of it is actually a similar graph, although it's over a much longer time scale. It's over something like a 45-minute time scale. And I don't know if you can just about make them out, but you see these green rectangles. That is the true average that you achieved over the time scale that you were circling, that you were thermaling. So what you expect to see on a normal flight is you think, well, I've set my McCready at 3 knots, or let's say 4 knots, or even 5 knots. Okay, you're expecting to see green bars that are going up to that 5 knot threshold, whatever your McCready is. If you don't, that means you're just not achieving the McCready speed. What you should do at that point is you should lower your McCready setting in the glider. Anyway, that'll do. So it's the worst demonstration of thermaling ever, but you get the idea of what this. When you're doing a normal flight, it works perfectly normally, So I'm not very good at talking and flying and zooming in on the panel. Okay, but can you see here? This is showing actually these are the thermals we've taken, getting pretty bad lift in general, and then getting minus 1.6 in the last effort we made because we were kind of going round and round the houses and getting sink half the time. Okay, and then this is to help you during your current thermal. It's about a 5-minute moving graph of what you've been climbing in. So those are the updates. Sorry I dragged that out. It's mainly my really bad thermaling trying to talk. Okay, thanks for watching.